Hey guys, hope you're well. I am here in Marion, Kansas, sitting on the steps of the Marion County Courthouse. And if you don't know me, long story short, I wanted to come to this case in Marion in which a police chief illegally raided the home of a newspaper owner as well as a local elected official very illegally. I am a former local TV news reporter, local TV news anchor who got fired for speaking the truth about Scientology and then decided to go off and have my own YouTube and kind of get honest information free from any corporate shackles, if you will. And if you want to check out my story, I will have a link for that. But let's talk about what happened today at court. First, I'll tell you what happened, and then I'll give you a little background on the case. So I think, if you're watching, you want to know immediately what happened. What happened is a very quick hearing. It was kind of a preliminary to the preliminary hearing, so not much expected to happen, but still I wanted to drive about 20 hours to get out here, even for the opening case, and just to get the thoughts of the owner as well, which I was able to do. So Gideon Cody, as a result of this raid, the former police chief of Marion, is facing simply a misdemeanor in obstruction of justice. The judge said, which is relatively new news, which isn't surprising, but you still wouldn't necessarily know. The judge says he expects this to, worst case scenario, result. Let me know if I'm in the way of you. Pardon me. He expected worst case scenario as a result, if he's found guilty, to simply face probation. So that was interesting. And there was a bond conversation. There was some very slight hope, but not real tangible hope, that maybe Cody would be remanded for a moment and actually be put in a cell and get some sort of astronomical bond. That's not what happened. Cody is allowed to be free on his own recognizance and got a $5,000 pretty affordable bond that the judge said he didn't even have to pay today. So Cody even has a later date. He doesn't have to pay the bond until a much later date, perhaps in a couple of weeks from now. So that certainly makes his life easier. People are wondering if Cody would show up. He's from Hawaii. It appears he has since moved back to Hawaii after all this controversy. So nobody knew if he would show up. He did. One of the reasons he did show up, though, is so he could potentially get a waiver to not have to show up in person in future proceedings. The judge hasn't ruled about it, but the judge inclined that he'd probably rule that he wouldn't have to show up in person and that he could show up virtually. So as smart, he showed up. People wouldn't know if he would show or not. He came all the way from Hawaii, so he did. And that was essentially the entire process of what happens in court. Not much more to say other than that, just looking at, another reason they want more discussions, they want another preliminary meeting because there's going to apparently a lot of discovery to come out. So this is why you come to these cases, to actually get wind of the discovery firsthand and hear about it for yourself and be able to relay that information. So there is going to be a lot of discovery. The defense of Cody has the opportunity to try to get the whole thing dismissed. That he brought that up potentially today, and the judge says, well, that could happen potentially at future hearings. So there is a chance that this whole case will be entirely dismissed, which would really be a travesty for justice. This already is a travesty for justice because Cody should be looking at jail time. Cody should be looking at manslaughter for the raid on the newspaper owner's home. He co-owned it with his mother, who is 98 years old, who due to stress died, I think, less than a day after the raid. So are you looking actually at manslaughter charges in a perfect world? Are you looking at fourth degree murder? Entirely possible as a charge. Negligent homicide. There's a lot of charges that he should have had, in addition to the obstruction of justice, which he's looking at. Illegal conduct of a government official. That's a much higher charge. Cody is not even being charged for the raid that had an illegal basis to begin with. The only thing that Cody is being charged with is the subsequent actions and cover-up of the raid. So now that I've talked about what happened, I'll talk a little bit as far as I know from the top of my head, because it's such a complicated, convoluted case that I'm not sure I'll get this 100% right, but I certainly have done my research. So, long story short, what essentially happened is It all started with a public meeting. There was an owner of a coffee shop and a restaurant inside a hotel, the Elgin Hotel, named Carrie Newell. And Carrie Newell hosted a town hall with the local congressperson. Carrie Newell, for really no reason at all, had reporters from the Marion County Record kicked out. After they were kicked out, an anonymous tipster called reporters at the Marion County Recorder and told them about Newell's driving history. Specifically, that Carrie Newell has a suspended license due to not one, but a multitude of DUIs. And that she is not legally allowed to drive until, of course, she gets that set up. Now, maybe you could get away with that if you're in Wichita, but in this small town, everybody knows everybody. So the police were obviously fully aware that Newell had this suspended license, and yet for some reason, she was allowed to drive within the vicinity for no problem. This occurred as she is trying to get a liquor license for that restaurant inside the hotel. She had bought the restaurant from the previous owners, and the owners were letting her use the liquor license that already existed. A councilwoman, Ruth Herbal, who was kind of the renegade, who was the renegade member of the city council, thought that's an issue. If you're looking for a liquor license and you have a sordid history of liquor yourself, a sordid history that has potentially put other people in danger, maybe you shouldn't get that liquor license approved. Then what happened is it's been clarified there's communication between Carrie Newell and the police. And the police apparently called Carrie Newell and said, "You are a victim of a crime." That's the story that Carrie Newell has given, that you are a victim of a crime. Because the tipster gave the information about Newell and her arrest record. That tipster gave it to the reporter, in which the reporter then didn't do anything with it, but then wanted to see if it was verifiable information, wanted to get it in a way that the public could get it. So the reporter used the Kansas Department of Records, knew that had the driver's license number, and was able to verify this information, in a way that the public is legally allowed to access and verify themselves. The driver's license number was obtained, but it's not illegal to enter or obtain, especially if you don't solicit it, enter or obtain a driver's license number. There's nothing illegal about that. And then a public database was used. The claim that Cody This is how asinine all this is. The claim that Cody is using is that the reporter illegally accessed this information through this website, and that the website was illegally or inaccessible to the public. It was not. It was a completely accessible site. So because of that, Gideon Cody, the police chief, got approval to commit this raid. As this was happening, Cody also, coincidentally, got a file about him. That file alleged past misconduct on Cody's part. Cody's role as police chief, as to why he accepted it, is perplexing, because Cody was a captain in Kansas City getting paid $150,000 a year. The guy was 1 year away from retirement. All of a sudden, with only 1 year to go, he decides to go to Marion, become the police chief, and take a massive pay cut, getting $60,000 a year. It was discovered in this file that Cody had made inappropriate sexual comments to a subordinate, as well as generally treating his subordinates in a poor manner, essentially. And that obviously could have been much worse had he stayed on the force in Kansas City. So you kind of think about it. You kind of think about a priest with the corrupt stuff they do. The Catholic Church, instead of prosecuting them, which they should if they have involvement with children, what they do is they have often transferred the priest. So it's a very similar situation in which, in order not to make a big stink, Cody simply got transferred to a smaller town with lower pay. This is how complicated. I'm almost out of breath. Explaining this situation in the most simplistic terms is more complicated than you'd think. So then what happened? So that information was found. Cody also and I said Cody raided the home of a councilwoman and the newspaper owner. Cody took computers, Cody took phones. Never, I don't think necessarily specifically within the Marion County office itself, but the homes of these newspaper is what Cody raided, essentially. So that's kind of where we are. Cody never is facing any more severe charges for the unauthorized raid, for the raid that resulted quite directly in the death of a 98-year-old woman. This shows the abomination of our legal system, because what it indicates is that if you do something really severe and you're a connected police or government official, the worst that'll happen is that you get a slap on the wrist. And that's kind of the tragedy of all of this. Even if Cody is declared guilty, the worst he's going to get is probation, which is a tragic travesty of justice. And that's why I'm here, because I want to highlight the last few journalists, local journalists with integrity that we have left. Marion County was one of those. Marion County Recorder is one of those papers with integrity. And I'm a former TV news journalist myself, so I see how scared TV news is, or local newspapers as well are, to challenge any government officials of any sort of credibility or significance, because then all of a sudden you lose, I say who cares, but then all of a sudden you lose their access to them. You can't interview them and get their lying 3-minute soundbite as if that means the world. So this is a paper that hasn't done that. And what happens when you don't do that? What happens when you don't care about getting that stupid 2-minute interview with an official with credibility? You get raided. Quite frankly, it's cause and effect. There's nothing more to analyze and to understand other than it was pure corruption at its purest form. And I'm hoping that at least Cody is facing some semblance of justice, that this will set a precedent, especially if I blast it out to a wider audience, that this will set a precedent where local newspapers or even local TV news, where they actually ask the tough questions and uncover the answers and highlight if an elected official or government or a police official is corrupt, actually highlight that and display and relay that information. I hope this sets a precedent. That's why there's also a lawsuit going on. And in Herbal, on the other side, this is a comment about politics. Herbal is one of the few people in Marion who kind of thought for herself, was a very independent figure on the city council, and she got a lot of consternation because she was the one person in Marion to vote against this bill that would no longer require public approval to borrow for the city, for the town to borrow money. You think in the name of transparency, you want as much public input as you could possibly get. Herbal is the only person who voted against that, and then all of a sudden she becomes a victim of this raid. So they're two separate raids, as I was speaking about before. But yeah, to me, as somebody who lost their job for speaking the truth about Scientology, I could only dream to be half the journalist that these guys are. I'm not saying my case was nearly as egregious or I'm nearly as I got fired from an entry-level position essentially. So I'm not saying that my story should garner nearly as much sympathy or outrage as this story, but I could relate to it in some way, and it has given me a mission to try to uncover the truth here and just try to stand by your fellow Jettison journalists. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this, no pressure, but drove out from Los Angeles and staying at a Fleabag motel. So if you want to support for a Fleabag motel, I have a Venmo and Cash App and a GoFundMe as well if you are interested, but no pressure. But it's worth coming out here. So I'm going to be here in December. I'm going to be here, which is the next development. I'm going to try to be here for the lawsuit situation as well. But this is a very quick thing. Most people would not drive all the way from LA to the middle of the country just to cover these 3 minutes. But to me, even if it's an extra, at least 300 people are watching the live, even if it's extra 300 people looking at this, and maybe with the video, if it's an extra 2,000 people that are aware of the situation, then me coming was 100% worth it, because I could do something that the local news can't do. I could talk about this for a bit longer, I could analyze, and I could do longer interviews. So guys, if you want, I had the pleasure of interviewing Eric Meyer, the owner of the newspaper, and the son of the mother who died, not once but twice. If you want to look at my 2 most recent lives, you could see Eric make his comments, and it was a real. I kind of felt starstruck, like I was in the presence of a celebrity or a hero of mine. I don't find many celebrities to be heroes of mine, but I find these journalists to kind of be here. I look up to him very much, so that was quite a privilege to be able to speak with him and get to know him for a couple seconds or a couple minutes. I think he spoke for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. But it's important because you see journalism falling apart. USA Today is buying and gobbling up all these newspapers. Mr. Meyer said the reason he was a university journalism professor way out of state, and he came back about 2 years ago to essentially try to save this neighborhood. It was newspaper is almost about to be bought out by Gannett, USA Today. And when Gannett buys a paper, what they do is they gut them. So they'll keep the front page local, and they'll have 1 or 2 local stories a day, and that's it. And the rest is just copy and paste from the national newspaper. Same thing with television. It's happening the same thing. The local stories are getting less and less, and they just replay news that a bigger conglomerate sends them out, and that same footage will be played across 20 different TV news stations. So you see news dying. This is why I want to do this, guys. I want to give you the news. I want to inform the people, but to do it within the confines of the formal 9 to 5, working for a bigger organization, unless you work for the Marion County Recorder, that's close to dead. So I also want to broadcast how all these industries are changing and how information gathering itself has almost essentially become corrupt if you are connected with a corporate-owned, which is increasingly the case, a corporate-owned newspaper or corporate-owned television news station. Marion was not corporate-owned. They were trying to make sure they never were. That's why Mr. Mayor came back. But again, this is what happens. So hope you guys enjoyed everything. That'll be the rub for a while about Marion. So hopefully I got everything correct. Tell me if I didn't, and let me know. And also, if you're in Marion and watching this and you want to talk to me, I'd love to interview you. So do send me an email. It's dodge.landesman@gmail.com. Again, dodge.landesman. That's my name, my YouTube name, my actual name. Dodge.landesman@gmail.com. And whether you live in Marion, have a viewpoint about this, or whether you're a First Amendment activist or something like that and want to talk and know a little bit about this stuff, let's have a conversation. I want to, I'm going to be in this neck of the woods for at least 2 more days because I made some good local connections. So I'm staying out in Claflin, which is about an hour and a half. So it's a bit of a drive, but I certainly want to come back and forth to Marion to see what's happening. So thank you guys for watching, and thank you for your interest in the name of truth and justice. Appreciate you guys being invested like I am. You have a good day. Bye-bye.